The morning mist hung over Green Meadow Farm like a soft grey blanket, and the dew dripped from the barn roof in a steady, gentle rhythm. Little Bunny stood at the edge of the garden, his whiskers twitching with something he could not name. It was the first day of autumn, the season when the soil grew cool and the pumpkins turned deep orange against the brown earth. And in his paw, nestled between his tiny claws, was a seed. Not just any seed, it was a carrot seed. Small and brown and unremarkable. The kind you might brush off your sleeve without a second thought. But this seed held a secret that no one had told him yet. The secret was this. Inside that tiny brown shell lived a memory of every fire that had ever fed the soil, every autumn leaf that had fallen and turned to humus, every rain that had soaked into the roots, every worm that had tunneled through the dark earth for 1,000 seasons. The seed remembered, and perhaps you too have held something so small it seemed to hold nothing, yet carried the whole story of the earth. If you would like to follow more of these quiet miracles, subscribe so we can share the next seed's secret together. And in the comments, tell us, what do you think the seed remembers most? The rain, the fire, or the patience of the soil? Little Bunny did not know this, of course. All he knew was that the seed felt warm in his paw, warmer than it should have been on a cool autumn morning. Farmer Gray had given it to him the evening before, when the sun was low and the shadows stretched long across the barn floor. "This is for you," Farmer Gray had said, his voice rough like dry hay. "Plant it tomorrow when the dew is fresh. It will grow into a carrot, but only if you are patient." Little Bunny had nodded, though he did not quite understand what patience meant. He was only a young bunny after all, and the world was full of things that needed doing right now. But something about the seed made him pause. If you have ever held a seed in your palm, you know that feeling. The weight of it, the stillness, the quiet promise that something is waiting to unfold. You might not know what it will become, but you trust that it will become something. Little Bunny trusted the seed. He pressed it gently into the soil, feeling the cool earth yield beneath his paw. The soil was dark and rich, the color of wet bark, and it smelled of rain and roots and ancient things. Around him, the farm was waking up. A rooster crowed in the distance, but it was a soft sound, not sharp like in the summer. The autumn air softened everything. 2 sparrows landed on the fence and watched him, their heads tilted, as if they understood the importance of this moment. Little Bunny covered the seed with soil, patting it down gently with his paw. And then he waited. The first day passed. Nothing happened. The second day was the same. The soil stayed dark and quiet. Little Bunny came to the garden every morning, his nose pressed close to the earth, searching for any sign that the seed had remembered what it was supposed to do. But the seed was silent. On the 3rd day, a soft rain began to fall. Little Bunny sat under a broad cabbage leaf, watching the water soak into the soil where he had planted the seed. The rain fell not heavily, but steadily, each drop a tiny kiss on the earth. And somewhere, deep beneath the surface, the seed began to stir. It was not a dramatic movement. There was no cracking, no bursting, no sudden rush of green. It was a slow, patient unfolding. The way a story begins when you read the first sentence and the world tilts slightly. The seed could feel the rain, and the soil, and the warmth of the autumn sun that filtered through the clouds. And the seed remembered. It remembered the fire that had swept through the forest 100 years before, a fire that had cleared the way for new growth. It remembered the frost that had cracked the earth open, allowing roots to reach deeper. It remembered the hooves of deer that had pressed the seeds into the soil, the beaks of birds that had carried them to new places. Every fire, every flood, every quiet season of rest. The seed carried them all. And now, in this small patch of earth on Green Meadow Farm, it was ready to grow. But growth takes time, as little Bunny was learning. 5 days passed, then 7. The soil remained unchanged. Little Bunny began to wonder if he had done something wrong. Perhaps he had planted the seed too deep or not deep enough. Perhaps the soil was too wet or too dry. He came to the garden and sat, his ears drooping, his whiskers limp. Farmer Gray found him there one afternoon, sitting in the dirt, staring at the empty patch of soil. The old farmer said nothing at first. He sat down beside little Bunny, his knees creaking, and together they watched the earth. A seed knows what to do, Farmer Gray said finally. It does not need you to tell it. It only needs you to trust it. Little Bunny looked up at him, his eyes round and dark. But nothing is happening, he said. Oh, something is happening, Farmer Gray said. You just cannot see it yet. Down there in the dark, the seed is waking up. It is stretching its legs, so to speak, getting ready to meet the light. Little Bunny tried to imagine the seed stretching, like a tiny creature waking from a long nap. It was a strange thought, but it made him feel better. That night, the moon rose full and bright over the farm, casting silver light across the garden. Little Bunny came out of his burrow and sat beside the planted seed. The air was cool, and the crickets sang their slow, sleepy song. And then, in the moonlight, he saw it. A tiny green curl, no bigger than the tip of his whisker, pushing through the soil. It was so small that he almost missed it. But it was there. The seed had remembered. And now, for the first time, the world could see what it had been doing all those quiet days. That moment when the green first breaks the surface is one of the oldest wonders on the farm. If you have ever waited for something to grow, you know how it feels. Subscribe so you do not miss the next time the soil gives up its secret. And leave a comment. What is something you have waited for that finally appeared when you least expected it? Little Bunny touched the green curl with the tip of his paw, as softly as if he were touching a dream. The sprout was fragile, pale green, still wet from its journey through the dark soil. He could see tiny hairs along its stem, so fine they were almost invisible, drinking in the moonlight. The next morning, the sprout was taller. It had unfurled 2 small leaves, each shaped like a tiny heart reaching toward the sun. Little Bunny sat beside it and watched the light move across the leaves. how they turned to follow the warmth. Days passed, and the sprout grew into a stem, and the stem grew taller, and leaves unfolded one by one. Little Bunny watered it each evening, carrying small droplets in a curled leaf, watching the water run down the stem into the soil. The carrot was growing underground, hidden from his eyes, but he could feel it. He felt it in the way the soil bulged slightly around the base of the stem, in the way the leaves stood proud and green. And then one afternoon, when the sun was low and golden, Little Bunny decided it was time. He touched the base of the stem and felt the soil give way, soft and loose. He pulled gently, and the earth released its gift. The carrot came out slowly, a long orange root dusted with dark soil, its shape slightly crooked, perfectly imperfect. Little Bunny held it in both paws, feeling its weight, its coolness, the tiny root hairs still clinging to the sides. It was not the biggest carrot in the garden, but it was his. He had planted the seed, waited through the quiet days, watered it when the rain forgot to come. And now, he held the proof that patience was not empty waiting, but a kind of trust. He carried the carrot to the kitchen, where Farmer Gray was lighting the lamp. The old farmer washed the carrot in a wooden bowl, the water turning brown with soil, and then sliced it into thin orange rounds. He placed the slices on a small plate and handed it to Little Bunny. Little Bunny took one piece and bit into it. It was sweet, sweeter than anything he had ever tasted, with a crunch that echoed through the quiet kitchen. The taste held the memory of rain and soil and sunlight, of waiting and trusting. He ate every slice, one by one, until the plate was empty. Every carrot holds the memory of the soil it came from, and every bite is a conversation with the earth. If you want to taste more stories like this, subscribe so you can come back to the garden whenever you need rest, and tell us in the comments, what is the sweetest thing you have ever eaten that you grew or watched grow? Outside, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Little Bunny curled up in his nest of hay, his belly full, his paws resting on the soft straw. The carrot seed was gone now, transformed into something that had fed him. But somewhere, deep in the garden, another seed was waiting. And the moon rose over Green Meadow Farm, the same moon that had watched 1,000 harvests, that would watch 1,000 more. Little Bunny closed his eyes, and the farm breathed around him, slow and deep and full of peace. A beetle crawled across the kitchen floor, its shell gleaming in the lamplight, and disappeared beneath the cupboard where the flour was stored. Farmer Gray blew out the lamp, and the room fell into the soft darkness of midnight. Through the window, the garden lay silver and still, each leaf holding a single drop of dew that would evaporate by morning. Little Bunny's breathing slowed, his small chest rising and falling like the tide in a quiet cove. The hay in his nest rustled as he turned, seeking the warmest spot, the place where the straw had gathered into a soft hollow. Outside, an owl called once, a low, round sound that rolled across the fields and faded into the trees. The carrot that little Bunny had grown, had pulled from the earth, had washed and sliced and eaten, was no longer a seed or a sprout or a root. It was part of him now, part of his fur and his whiskers and the tiny beating heart beneath his ribs. He had taken the soil's gift into his body, and the soil had given freely, as it always does when you ask with patience. A moth fluttered against the window glass. A soft tap, 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 like a tiny messenger asking to be let in. The stars above Green Meadow Farm had shifted, a constellation of the Great Bear now hanging low over the barn roof. Little Bunny's whiskers drooped, and his paws curled inward, the way a sleeping bunny's paws always curl, as if holding on to a dream. The kitchen was still now, the wooden bowl empty and dry, the knife resting on the counter where Farmer Gray had left it. In the garden, the hole where the carrot had been was already filling with soil, blown by the wind, settled by the night. The earth had no memory of empty spaces, only of the seeds that would come tomorrow, and the seeds that had come before. A cricket sang from a crack in the foundation, its song thin and sweet, like a single thread of gold in the darkness. Little Bunny's nose twitched once, twice, and then stopped, as if even his nose had decided it was time to rest. The moon had climbed higher now, smaller and brighter. A white coin in the endless black. Farmer Gray's footsteps sounded on the stairs, soft and slow. The creak of old wood, the closing of a door. The farm was silent, and little Bunny, whose paws had held a seed, whose eyes had watched it grow, whose mouth had tasted the sweetness of the earth, slept. He slept as the garden slept, as the soil slept, as every seed that has ever been planted in the dark waits for the light to return. Tomorrow, the dew would gather again, and the rooster would crow, and the sparrows would return to the fence. But tonight, there was only the warmth of the hay, the quiet of the kitchen, the soft rhythm of a small bunny's breath. And that was enough. That was everything.